So it's about synergy, 4 projects in synergy with the climate and the site over and above everything else. The first project is something that we did in the Nokha region of Rajasthan, which is 2.5 hours drive from Jodhpur. It's called Narsighar. This is a house which is 36,000 square feet and really has a synergy between tradition and contemporary. This is the floor plan. You get off, there is a walkway which is open, made of stone, with water troughs on either side. And like many houses that were done traditionally, this is also based on a large central courtyard. But what we've done here, in addition, is created secondary courtyards on the outer side every place. So you'll see courtyards on the east and the west. You'll see screened spaces, which we call outdoor courtyards, towards the outside of every room. And what this does is it shields the entire house from the excessive heat that is prevalent in Rajasthan, with the variation in temperature 15 to 18 degrees from the outside to the inside. And while I was shooting this house, I stayed there for 3 days. It was 42 degrees outside. And believe it or not, we were roaming around the entire house, no fan, no AC, nothing. All the walls are real stone, there's insulation, and then there's the inner wall. And every space is screened from direct sunlight. So the light inside the house is all indirect. And here is the upper floor plan. So there are multiple heights also within this house. There is a full floor height, which is 15 feet. There is a 1.5 floor height, which is 23 feet. And then there is a double height space, which is 36 feet. And then there's the overall courtyard height, which is 46 feet. So this is a cross section. So this is the way the entire house was planned, in a series of volumes, constantly changing, allowing you different perceptions of space within it from every single part. And the house that is seen from outside, that's the entrance porch. You walk through a long corridor flanked by water troughs, and then you finally enter the house, which has these volumes which gradually go up towards the center and then descend back towards the rear. So like I said, all these walls are real stone. All the jalis are also real stone. The labor for this entire house was sourced from the village themselves. We sent 2 engineers. This was all done during COVID time. Those engineers trained those people who had never before done anything to do with construction, and the house was built during COVID. So these are views from different angles of the house, showing how there's a very interesting composition that keeps changing from wherever you are.
Sanjay, what stone is this?
This is the local Jodhpur sandstone.
Not Karoli.
Not what?
Karoli.
No. It's a Jodhpur pink sandstone, available like almost within 30-40 kilometers of the site. In fact, we went to 4 different quarries with 1 matching stone. Got it because the entire stone was not possible at a time from 1 quarry. And the house, with all its detailing, each one of those arches is also built out of a single block of stone. So a lot of stone requirement, but all executed within 2 years. So that's the entry corridor which leads you to the house. The pergolas are also solid stone slabs. And that's one of the exterior courtyards on the east and the west. This is the central atrium space. So because of the dust storms, it is a covered courtyard, unlike the open courtyards that we're used to seeing in other houses, and with a clear story around, which allows hot air to escape from the top. And that's the main stairway going up. So very interesting light patterns throughout the day. And what you've done is a very interesting mix where traditional motifs are taken, but they are scattered. So if you look at the pattern, it is derived from tradition, but it is not used in a traditional way. And that's the kind of detailing that follows all through. Even if you look at the staircase in detail, there is a pattern, but then it gradually is dense at a portion and then it scatters across. That's the outdoor space of the living room. That's the entrance court. And this is right from the outside. So you don't really see a gate when you enter. Even that is screened. Short movie that takes you through. Nothing is staged. This is all the real family. These are all the people who actually use the house. So that was Narsighar, designed, thank you, designed completely in response to the traditional values that have existed in this area and the climate, and actually is used like this with very highly energy efficient. This is an old project, but we went back and took a video now of, so it was done about 6 years ago, but the video was done recently, 2 months ago, so just showing how the building, when it was finished, and how it appears now, and how it is being used. So this was something that he always wanted to do right since college, where we were taught with a very good, we were lucky to have a good set of professors who taught us all this thing about creating spaces that are organic and not structured, and finally got an opportunity to do this probably, 25 years after getting out of college. So that's a site. It's actually a 100-acre site. there's one single road on the perimeter, so that the 90% of the site is pedestrian, landscape spaces, and all the access is only from the perimeter. And towards the front portion of the site, we're only talking about this one part. So we master planned the whole thing, but this presentation is about Ras houses, which sits in the middle here, which is completely organic and low rise. So that's the floor plan. And this kind of floor plan we had been dying to do since many years, and finally got an opportunity to do it. And how it started is that this site had a 16-meter contour difference. And our first call from the engineer once we got the project was कि आप डिज़ाइन करते जाओ, बीच में हम लेवलिंग शुरू कर लेते हैं. So I said, no, please don't touch it. Leave it as it is. He said, but they have done multiple of these townships before, and they were used to their architects giving them one unit plan, which was then multiplied 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever, 20, 25 times. He said, but, and they told us that also, that if you're making a design which is so complicated, once we showed it to them, they said, we are not going to pay you because your fees is based on repetition, but here we don't see any repetition, so how will the fees be charged? He said, don't worry about that, but anyway, that's another story. So the idea was that you go with the contours, keep dropping it as it goes, keep turning and twisting the building. And in doing that, you make every space very interesting with a unique identity of its own. So wherever you see the project from, it appears different in terms of the composition, in terms of the massing, in terms of the color scheme, and the way it sits on the existing ground. So this is a series of hostels, as well as a guest house, as well as some common spaces which are used by all of them. So all the colors were derived from the colors that are used in Rajasthan, and that's what we used in all the corridors, so that there is this whole differentiation that happens. Once you go to a point and you turn, the color changes. So every part has its own identity. All the circulation naturally ventilated, naturally lit. And at every point you get this different composition of the outside from the inside. All of it was made in fly ash bricks, deep recessed windows, lots of common ventilated spaces, so with less reliance on air conditioning. The entire energy, believe it or not, comes from the residual energy of the cement plant. So there's zero energy being taken from the grid in the entire 100-acre township, not just this part. And that's a natural reservoir in the site, which we are deepening and making to proper thing. This is all done now. And this is a brief video that we just took recently.
जय श्री कृष्ण जय श्री कृष्ण
That was Raj Houses, Rajasthan. And now, thank you, thank you. This is a project we just completed 2 months ago called Crest 9 in Maharashtra in a place called Dapoli. Actually, it's Anjarle. So this is halfway between Bombay to Goa on the highway. So the overall site is master planned by us. There are 450 houses and the entire site, this looks flat, but it's a huge contoured hill, and actually you don't even feel like doing anything because the site is so beautiful. But then of course, this is a developer who wanted to create this project, so we took a lot of time and effort building the roads based on the existing contours and minimizing land cut and fill. But however, we are only going to talk about the club that is in that location right now. So this is the floor plan of the club. As opposed to most sites, because of the way this site was and because of the way the whole master plan eventually turned out, this site had the best view of the sea. But it was 7 meters below the road. So the client first said, just lift the whole thing up. I said, no, because everybody driving through must also be able to see the sea, when they're going towards the houses, which are much beyond this. So we built the entire club lower than the road level. And when you see the plan, you actually come to a very gently sweeping curve made in laterite, and you finally enter the club, and then there is a level below you. So because it steps down with the terrain, and at every single point you get amazing views of the sea. So that's the road on the top, and you step down to actually enter the club, and then you step down further, and then there's a lower level with the services. That's a detailed view of the different levels stepping down towards the pool. And this is when you approach it. So when you approach it, the entire club is sitting down. On one side, there is a series of steps that takes you down. The other side, there is a ramp that takes you down. So this is an aerial view, which of course you can't really see unless you're up in the sky. So this is just to understand. So that's the road at the bottom, and from one side you take a flight of steps down, on the other side you take a ramp down, you enter through this curved wall space, and then the entire roof undulates into different heights. So each of the spaces within has a different volume in plan as well as in section, and amazing views of the ocean in all directions. This is again a detailed view of the levels as you see them from the top. So here is when you're on the lower deck and looking back towards the club. So you can actually never see the building from the opposite side. So it's a building which is only experienced in terms of its volumes. Stunning views. And every part opens out in this massive deck. All the corridors are naturally ventilated, naturally lit. There are 5 bedrooms, a bar, a restaurant, a spa, and of course a large pool and a multi-purpose space, indoor games, gymnasium. Short video clip that will take you through. Walk ceilings. Anybody from Vox?
Highest views on YouTube.
All the walls over flexstone also. Thank you. And this is the last project. This took, I thought 8 years was a very long time, but then I heard 12 years and 14 years, and I was like, okay, so not bad, this was 8 years only. So this project started when 8 years back, it was a close competition between 4 architects. We won the project, and then it just went on and on. So it's called the Prestige University in Indore. It's actually a 36-acre campus where we master planned the whole campus, and this is the first building. The challenges in this building were many. A, because eventually the classroom block is going to be different. So in this one building, we had to make a module that worked for classrooms of 4 different sizes, as well as admin areas, a library and a cafe. Of course, a library and cafe would permanently be here, but the classrooms had to be done in such a way that they could be moved later on to the next building. So the climate in Indore is, again, just like here, really hot summer months. And again, unlike most sites where you have a road on one side, 2 sides, 3 sides or 4 sides, here we had just a little mouth on the Ujjain-Indore road, which is a new highway in Indore. So you approach exactly from that point and you have no other choice. So we started with this concept of how do we create 300,000 square feet in a building and leave the maximum amount of garden space, looking at the client's requirements. And then you realize that if you want to leave a large amount of landscape space, which amounts to 60% of the site, the building becomes very high for an institute. So we said, okay, what if we were to do ground plus 3, then you spread it, but the landscape becomes a little lower. And then he said, that makes the footprint 90 by 80 meters, which is too big, and then you don't have internal light. So light penetration is only 8 meters. How do you get light into the building? So we said, okay, let's do a courtyard. With a courtyard, you get more light. But what's happening is the landscape space is going on reducing and going on reducing. And then we looked at this whole thing of courtyard buildings have existed since multiple years. A house courtyard is very different because it's small. But when you do these large courtyards, it becomes like whether you're on the east corner, west corner, south corner, north corner, the courtyard in a sense looks the same. It's the same perception of space, whichever point you are in that corridor, except for where the sunlight is coming from. So we broke this up into multiple courtyards of different sizes, so that every portion inside gets an identity of its own. And then traverse this through organic streets. So not like a structured building, but you can literally go diagonally across from part to part. So we literally cut a whole diagonal street running through the building for the future expansion that will happen later on. And then finally, because the landscape space became so low, we decided, let's tilt this building down diagonally and let the garden go across. So in that, you give back 100% of landscape space when you add the terrace to the landscape left at the ground. And this in turn gives every courtyard a totally different dimension, because the heights are constantly varying. The indoor street gets a total different variation wherever you are within the street. So all of this was divided into a grid. There was that inference of the image of a stepwell. And then the use of screens on all sides to reduce the heat gain further, in addition to the landscape terrace and the courtyards. This is the program. The building steps back diagonally towards the southwest corner. Vastu correct also. And then this is the beauty. The beauty is in this section of this building. So you walk in, that's the first section, second, third, fourth. Of course, there are multiple sections, but these are just a few to see what's happening in terms of the open space and the enclosed space and the semi-enclosed space. Constant variation throughout. I mean, the sections itself form a graphic. So these are floor plans, a very large cafeteria to house 750 students at a time, a very large auditorium for 600 people at a time, stepping back, creating a huge library space on the first floor, and then the modular classrooms which happen at the next level, and then still larger classroom on the top, and then finally the admin offices right on the top. So that's the overall plan, where literally the whole site is, in a sense, landscaped. These are cross sections of the building, the entire building in detail, which shows penetration of light coming in indirectly through each and every portion. And that's the building completed. This is the entrance side. You walk in through this really large doorway, which is actually the indoor street. That's from the opposite corner where the building is the highest, and it actually slopes down towards 0, 0. So the building starts at 0, 0, goes up to 28 meters in height. And these are the screens that are used in 3 different permutations across the building envelope. So that's the entry. And then you're walking in, and then you see a courtyard on your left. As you walk further, you see a courtyard on your right. And then you look up at each one of these courtyards. They're all totally different in dimension, as I mentioned earlier. So some are vertical and narrow and go all the way up. Some are broader. There are bridge connections at the library level. This is a courtyard which opens into the cafeteria. And indirect light coming in through each part. This is the cafeteria. So you're sitting in the cafeteria, literally you're looking here and you see a courtyard on that direction, you see another courtyard in this direction, you see one courtyard behind you. And I was here 2 weeks ago. It was 36 degrees outside. Of course, he provided air conditioning, you can see the air conditioning, but there was no air conditioning on, and students was happily sitting here enjoying their meals and coffee and whatever. So it's a building that has almost no heat gain. We'd done the SDA study prior to having designed the entire building, which is the spatial daylight autonomy as well as the heat reduction. So not only are there courtyards that punctuate the entire building till the ground, there are also terraces that the classrooms walk out into, the library walks out into. So at every single level, you are allowed to step out into landscape spaces. So that's one of the views in the indoor street that cuts across the building. And this is one of the library spaces. That's another library space. So each portion within is also identified differently, and you've got Warli artists to actually paint this on site, and that's been used throughout the building in signages as well. These are more views of the library. These are the signages for the classrooms at every level. And here you can see the classroom opening into a courtyard on the outside. No need of any kind of curtains or blinds because the light is always indirect. And these are the step platforms across the building on the top. So we are still making a movie on this. This is just a sneak peek, a little glimpse. The building actually emerges through the fog early in the morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. So this is a building with synergy at multiple levels. And thank you for your attention, and thank you all for attending Dialogues.